So at this point, we can output this basic, unstyled and unfinished meals list here, this meals screen to be precise. But of course, at the moment, this is all hard-coded. In main Dart, I always output the meals screen with all my dummy meals and a hard-coded title. That's not the goal. Instead, the goal is to here output the categories screen as we did it before, and to then make sure that if we tap a category, we're navigated to that category's meals screen, which then only shows the meals for that category. And that's therefore what we're going to implement now. For that, as a first step, we can get rid of the meals screen import here in the main Dart file and of the dummy data import there, and instead go to the categories Dart file, where we have this categories screen. And there I want to add a new method. And I'll name this method _select category. And it won't return any data, hence its return type is void. And here we're doing something we haven't really done before. We are adding a method to a stateless widget. Now we haven't done this before because in most cases, when we added a method to a widget, so when we reacted to a button tab, for example, we wanted to update some state. And of course, we can't do that in a stateless widget. But here, we don't want to update state. Instead, I want to load a different screen. And for this, we can use a feature built into Flutter. We can use the Navigator class, which you already saw earlier in the course. Earlier in the course, we used it with its pop method to remove a screen and go back to another screen, even though you didn't know that we were kind of working with screens back then. But this modal, which we, for example, closed, in the end also was kind of like a screen that was opened, and with Navigator pop, we were able to close it. Now we don't want to close a screen, but instead we want to navigate to a screen. And this can be done by using the push method. Now the push method wants a context value and then a route value. And in the end, what push will do is it will push this route, which in the end kind of will be a widget on top of the current stack of screens. And this can be a bit of a strange term when you hear it for the first time, but in the end, in the Flutter, navigation basically works with screen stacks. You can think of the screens being organized as layers put on top of each other, and as a user, you always see the topmost layer, the topmost screen. So that's why it's called push. You push a new layer onto this stack of screens which you already have. And on the other hand, if you pop a screen, you remove one of these layers. And since the user always sees the topmost layer, the user then sees the screen below the screen that was popped off. That's the idea here. So here we're pushing, and we need to pass in a context and a route, as you learned. Now, since I'm in a stateless widget here, context is not globally available. You might recall that in the state objects that belonged to stateful widgets, a context property was globally available and could therefore be used in all the methods. Here, that's not the case. Therefore, here we indeed must accept a context value, which must be of type build context, in this select category function here, so that we can pass context as a value to push. By the way, alternatively, you can also call navigator of context push and then only pass the route to push. This is in the end the same as writing this code like this, and it is up to you which approach you prefer. I'm just putting this out there because you'll see this kind of code in a lot of Flutter projects as well. But that's how you then push a new screen onto this stack of screens. But what's up with this route now? Well, such a route is created by instantiating a material page route. So by creating a material page route object with help of the material page route class, which is provided by Flutter. And this gives us such a route that can be pushed onto this stack. And as you can see, since I used autocompletion here, this wants a builder parameter, which wants a function that gives us a context, so we will get a context automatically in this builder function, and we should return a widget as part of this function. And that widget will be that screen widget that should be displayed. So here I have a function that automatically receives some context object, and in there I then return my meals screen in this case. Now for this to work, we also must import this meals screen. So here from the screens folder, I'll import meal start so that meals screen is available here. And now of course we still must provide a title and then our meals. That hasn't changed. So for the moment, I'll just say some title and pass an empty list of meals, though this will change later. But for the moment, that's it. And this is how we would push this meals screen on top of this stack of pages. And since it would therefore be the topmost screen, it would be the screen users see. But of course, right now, select category never gets executed. So we have to make sure that it does get executed by connecting it to our category grid item. Or to be precise, by connecting it to this onTap parameter here inside of our category grid item widget. Well, and you learned how that works. Inside of category grid item, you can simply expect to get a function which could be called onSelectCategory, and this then should be received as a value like this. And if you do accept this parameter and bind it to this property, inside of the categories screen, where we are outputting these category grid items, we can now set onSelectCategory, and here, for example, set it to an anonymous function where we then execute selectCategory. And here we then pass our context to selectCategory, so that inside of selectCategory we have this context. With that done here, if you now go back to the category grid item and also make sure that onSelectCategory is connected to this onTap parameter, so passed as a value to onTap, so that this function, which we just added here, is indeed executed whenever this inkwell is tapped. So in the end, whenever this category grid item here is tapped. If you do wire it up like this, you can save everything and force a reload. And now if you go back and you tap a category, you see that we get a nice little animation and the screen changes. And we get this back arrow here automatically added by Flutter. We did not add this manually to the app bar. It was added by Flutter. And if we tap this back arrow, it will automatically pop that screen off this stack of screens, so that we get this expected behavior of being able to go back, and Flutter will manage this screen stack for us behind the scenes. Of course, at the moment, we always see the same output for all categories, because we're not actually loading category-specific data, but this is one way of navigating between different screens in Flutter, and it's crucial to be aware of this feature. Well, and I guess now you are.